March 7th, 1983. This is Joe Todd. Interview with Dr. Donald Berthrong, B-E-R-T-H-R-O-N-G. Dr. Berthrong, where were you born?
Across Wisconsin.
And when's your birthday?
October 2nd, 1922 I was born.
1922. How long have you lived in La Crosse?
About 19 years.
19 years.
And I enlisted in the United States Army.
World War II?
Yes.
(1941)
Right after. I think it was March 1942. That time I was inducted.
What'd you take basic?
Never had basic.
Never had basic.
Never had basic. We went to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, where we were processed, and then I was sent down to Chinook Field, Illinois, to the aircraft school. I stayed on there, went through the air mechanics school and the electrical specialist school. And I went on to the ASDP program in 3 or 4 different universities. Then went on to officer candidate school as a signal, came out as a signal officer, a signal corps officer, went overseas to the Philippines as a signal corps officer.
Were you in the Philippines during the war?
Just at the end.
So you were in Manila when the war ended?
Yeah.
What was Manila like on VJ Day when the Japanese surrendered?
Most of it was bombed out, torn up. There'd been a lot of artillery fighting. They walled the city. Santo Tomas was just in rubble. Practically the whole downtown was in rubble. The big post office, the big government buildings had holes in them.
Were you there after they liberated the prison at Santo Tomas?
No, I don't recall anything about that. Okay. I was stuck out for a period of time out north of Manila, out near Clark Field. And after fighting was over, my job was to take young troops around, see that they got to their units. So I was traveling a good deal by jeep convoy over the northern end of Luzon.
Were you there during the Battle of Manila in the Philippines?
No.
That was already over?
That was over.
Okay. You went to several universities, you say?
Let's see, I went to Ripon College, to University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, and then Michigan State College. It was now Michigan State University.
Yeah.
I guess it was Michigan A&M back.
Was this during your Army career or after?
This was during the Army.
Okay.
This is in the Army Specialized Training Program, ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program.
What kind of courses did you take at the university?
Electrical engineering. They almost made an electrical engineer out of me.
Did you get a degree while you were going there?
No, I never. I was about one course short of having an electrical engineering degree. Then after I was discharged from the Army, I decided I didn't want to go back and take engineering, so I switched.
What did you switch to?
History. History and political science as an undergraduate, and then the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and then I did my graduate work in history at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
When did you get your BA and your master's?
Let's see, I got my BA in 1947. My master's in 1948. And my PhD degree I completed it in September of 51, but I wasn't awarded the degree until January of 1952.
What's your dissertation on?
It was entitled Social Legislation in Wisconsin, 1836, 1900.
After you got your PhD, did you teach?
Yes. First year I went to what was then the University of Kansas City. It's now the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I was there 1 year, 1951, 52. And then September of 1952, I came down to Norman, joined the faculty of the University of Oklahoma.
In the history department?
Mm-hmm.
How long did you teach at Norman?
18 years.
18 years.
I left there in the summer of 1970. Yep.
How big was the university when you went to Norman?
I don't remember. Maybe, I'm guessing, 12, 13,000, something in that order.
What building was the history department located in?
In Gettinger Hall on the first floor. Our first office partner was old Dean Gettinger, who was still live and active after he had retired from the registrar's office, which he ran for any number of years.
What?
He came back to the history department and taught English history for a couple of years at least.
What kind of person was he?
He was with me, a very kind and considerate and gentle person. Very tolerant with me. He was several generations older than I was. And he was very helpful. Talked about the university, talked about people. Gave me a good feel for the University of Oklahoma.
How long had he been there?
Probably since about World War I. He must have been around there 35, 40 years by the time I got there.
That was the administration of Dr. Boyd then.
Well, he wasn't in the registrar's office all the time. He taught history, I think, for some time. And then he went over into the registrar's office.
Now, did you teach history the whole time you were at the university?
Yes.
What did you think of OU when you first arrived there?
I had completed my graduate work at the University of Wisconsin. I was very young as an academic, I think maybe 29 years old or so, 29, 30 years old. And I think most young academics come out of graduate school believing that they're going to reform the university, reform all academia and all students within a year. I think I fell into that category. I was struck by the openness, the friendliness, the collegial attitude of people. nice working relationships within the history department. Friendships that we established very quickly. Students, I found that you had to work more directly with them. Some of the students, not all, a certain percentage, very bright, very sincere young men and women. They came out of little high schools, 35, 50 students, 1, 2 teachers to the high school. And they simply they didn't have the skills necessary. So part of our task, after I got adjusted a little bit, was to see how you could get the students the skills to make academic progress in the university.
Who were some of the most interesting people you met at OU?
Most of my associations, close associations, were within the Department of History. Edward Everett Dale had retired by the time I got there, and it was a relatively young department, and stayed together for about 15 years, more or less. Gilbert Fight, Gene Holland, Edwin McReynolds, Johnny Zell, Max Moorhead, Harold Gibson, a little bit later. There were, that was in U.S. history. I officed with a German historian by the name of Hans Schmidt till he left to go to Tulane. Savoy Lottenville was the director of the press. Yeah, they were all interesting people in their own different ways. You really didn't have a great deal of association as a young person with the deans and presidents, of the vice presidents. You tended to work more within your colleagues in the department.
Who was president of the university?
George Cross.
George Cross.
President when I got there.
I'm talking to him Friday.
Yeah, he was president when I was there. And last year or two, it seems that a man by the name of Holloman was president, Herbert Holloman. That was only for a very brief period of time. Cross was a very, in many ways, a very fine president. Essentially, he let you do your work, used what funds the state gave the University of Oklahoma back in those days.
Were you a football fan?
Oh yeah, I went to the football games for maybe 10 years.
Is that when OU had their big winning streak?
I saw the OU football team play during that big winning streak in the early 50s. We got tickets almost immediately to go to the football games.
What was that, 47 games?
You know, around then. I saw the game that, I think it was at OU when Notre Dame beat OU and ended the streak. Yeah, I think I saw that game.
What year was that?
I don't remember. It must have been in the mid 56, 57. Sometime in there.
When you left OU, where'd you go?
Purdue University.
Are you there now?
Yes.
In history?
Yes.
How do you compare Purdue to OU?
Oh, they're two different
Well, can you
universities.
compare them?
They're two different universities. Purdue is dominated by engineering, science, technology, agriculture. The arts component within Purdue is much smaller. It's a great deal more emphasis upon vocation, professional training, great deal more emphasis upon research. It just has a different flavor than OU. At OU, the largest component of the Norman campus is College of Arts and Sciences, whereas at Purdue, the humanities and social sciences are broken apart, and the science is its own school, and humanities and social sciences have their own school. And of course, it's a great deal bigger. I don't know how many students are at University of Oklahoma now, but Purdue we have about 33,000 students.
Is Purdue larger?
I think it is.
Yeah.
It must be larger. It must be maybe, 10,000-15,000 larger. Or you have 20,000 students, somewhere around there.
I think so. Who was your father?
Leroy M. Berthrong.
From Wisconsin?
Yeah.
And who was your mother?
Viola Ritter Berthrong.
What kind of work your father do?
He did a lot of things in his life. As a youngster, he hunted and clammed on the Mississippi River. He worked in the wheat ranches out in the Red River of the Dakotas. He worked on the railroad. And he worked as a streetcar, and he farmed. He farmed. And then he came to La Crosse and worked on the shops on the railroad, and then became a streetcar motorman.
How big was La Crosse when you were living there?
No, around 40,000.
What was the main industry there?
It was diversified. There was a auto appliance factory. There was a big mill that turned out hunting boots, tennis shoes called Lacrosse Rubber Works. There was a component of Alice Chalmers. Train company, heating had a component there. Railroad town, it was a division point for both the Milwaukee and the Burlington. A lot of people in the north end of town where I lived worked in the railroads.
Okay, you were born in 22. How did the Depression affect you and your family in La Crosse?
Dad was out of work 2.5 years, 3 years. And we never starved. We never even went hungry. We always had enough warm clothing. Sometimes the coal pile got a little short. We didn't have anything extra. We just lived and survived.
Did you work for WPA?
No, I was too young. I would have only been 12, 13.
Did your father work for him?
Dad worked for the CWA, Civil Works Administration. He worked for the PWA. And then he kind of, sometimes they had odd jobs with the streetcar company.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd help tear up the ties of the old streetcars and tear up the rails. He and my uncles went out in woodlots, rigged together an old engine and put together a saw, and brought in oak, which I split and sold 25 cents to 50 cents a cord. All nice split oak.
Mm-hmm. Not bad for oak.
It was easy to split.
Yeah.
After you knew what you were doing.
With just a hammer and a wedge?
No, just an old axe.
Just an axe?
Just an axe. They were very good. They selected the trees to make sure there was straight grain. And after you let it lay a while, you can see the grains.
Yeah.
If you know how to hit it with the axe, it just pops open.
Was there any work by the CC camps around La Crosse?
Mm-hmm. There was one camp just about 20-25 miles north of La Crosse. My brother almost went into the CCC, but then he got a job, so he didn't have to. I was just about 12, 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I just never...
What kind of work they do up there in the camps?
Mostly soil conservation, roads, gutters, culverts, planted some trees.
What were you doing when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, 1941?
I was in college. I was at a little school in La Crosse State Teachers College. And the news, I was out at school that day, and why, I don't know.
That was Sunday.
It was a Sunday.
Yeah.
But I was out there, and the news came through on the radio. And our friends and I sat around, the males sat around, and figured out what we were going to do. And most of us enlisted within a period of 1 to 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and just went off to war.
Were you teaching at OU during the Korean War? That's 51, 52?
I didn't get done until September of '52,
Yeah.
so it was almost over by then.
What was your idea on that? Should we have gotten involved in Korea?
Yeah, I think so. If we were going to maintain the Republic of South Korea, as had been agreed by the division of the Korean Peninsula, I think we had no choice but to stay, operate within the United Nations, and then try to arrive at some settlement, some line that approximated the line that had been agreed to.
How come Korea was divided initially?
Between the North Koreans, dominated by the communists, and the Southern Koreans, dominated really by the United States. And it was, I don't remember whether it was part of the settlement after World War II.
The Japanese occupy Korea?
It was a matter of who was going to receive the prisoners of war. The Japanese had, of course, conquered Korea back in the 19th century, 1890s, and had dominated since. And the question is, the Russians would receive the prisoners in the northern half of the peninsula, and the United States forces in the southern half of the peninsula, and then they just drew the boundary just north of Seoul.
What's you say you teach American history, U.S. history?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one particular period that you favor?
No, I teach, my specialization is the American Indian. Since when I started, I've taught survey courses in United States history, constitutional history, recent United States history, history of the West, Indian history.
Any certain tribal groups?
Cheyenne, Arapaho mostly is my research.
Mm-hmm.
But down at University of Oklahoma, I taught a general history of the Indians. Up at Purdue, I'm just teaching a history of the Plains Indians, and then some seminars for graduate students.
Any reason why you chose the Cheyenne and Arapaho?
Oh, it was a process of elimination. When I came down here, I was employed to teach the history of the West. And I was always trained to look locally for primary sources. And so for a year or two, about a year, I read as extensively as I could in the history of the Indians here in the Indian Territory. Then my judgment was that the 5 civilized tribes had a very substantial bibliography. And a lot of people were working on it, but on the Plains Indians, the western Oklahoma, Kiowa, Comanche, although there had been some studies, Cheyenne, Arapaho, but much less had been done.
Yeah.
And so I started looking for primary materials, and the obvious thing was the Oklahoma Historical Society and the Indian Archives. Rella Looney, who was the curator of this, and I started about 1953. Started coming up here a couple days a week, started doing research. First I just looked at a lot of the material of Kiowa, Comanche, Apache, Cheyenne, Arapaho. And I quickly found that you really couldn't do an intensive study on too big a group. If you were going to do a tribal study, you had to select 2 particular groups or 1 particular group and go to work on that.
In just, I guess in a few words that's possible, the Cheyenne and Arapaho. Now that's 2 different tribal groups, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've always heard them together.
They both speak the Algonquin language, although the dialect is quite different. After they were pressed out of the eastern woodlands, sometime late 18th century, as they moved across the Missouri onto the northern plains, in the area of the Black Hills, they became allies and fought their wars together. And since that time until today, here in Oklahoma, they've been linked together on one reservation since the 1860s, 1869. And they've been treated together out in Colorado in subsequent treaties, going back to the Treaty of Fort Laramie. But in the north, they're separate.
Mm-hmm.
The Northern Cheyennes have their reservation up on the Tongue River, between the Tongue River and the Rosebud in Montana. And the Northern Arapahoes live over in the Wind River Reservation over in Wyoming. So they're no longer linked together the way the Cheyenne and Arapaho of Oklahoma are.
Who pushed them out of the Woodland area?
That is hard. That is really hard to be precise about. I believe that the Chippewa, and to some extent the Cree, who had superior arms, and Sioux behind them with pressure, just gradually moved them out of the woodlands along the Minnesota River.
I associate the Sioux with being in the Dakotas.
Well, the Sioux were later, but they were also woodland Indians. They migrated from the Ohio Valley, the Mississippi Valley. Much more numerous people than the Cheyenne Arapaho.
Who are the hereditary enemies of the Cheyenne and Arapaho?
Lots of people. Shoshone, Crow, Pawnee. They probably Utes. I think those four groups probably. But they had fights with a lot of other people. They even fought the Sioux, Oglala Sioux, although they said they never fought. They definitely had some conflicts with the Oglala and Brule Sioux before they linked up and even became, in a way, allies too, of the Brule and Oglalas.
When did they move the
They also fought the Kiowa Comanches, or as the Cheyenne and Arapaho spread down the plains from the Black Hills. Some people stayed in the north. Bands came down and were attracted by William Bent's fort and trade along the Arkansas River. And by about 1827, 1828, they started fighting the Kiowa and Comanche and warred with them until about 1840, 1841, when they had peace. So they fought over the whole extent of the plains. That's why George Bird Grinnell calls them the Fighting Cheyennes.
You know John Blackcow?
No.
He's the old chief of the Cheyenne Indians. Lives in El Reno.
No, I don't know.
I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. There was, I think his last name was Redhead. He was keeper of the arrows for the Cheyenne.
Redhead, Edward Redhead.
Redhead, okay.
Fan man.
Okay. What are the sacred arrows?
The Cheyennes have two sacred tribal totems. The medicine arrows, sacred medicine arrows, there are four of them. 2 man arrows and 2 buffalo arrows. The man arrows to protect the tribe in war. The buffalo arrows to give them a good life, food, health. And the Cheyennes believe that when the medicine arrows were captured by the Pawnees in 1830, that this was the beginning of tribal misfortunes. They're venerated. They and the buffalo hat in the north, sacred buffalo hat in the north, protect the tribe through the renewal ceremonies, bring health and welfare. They're entrusted to one holy man. And we have a fair record of the keepers of the arrows back into the middle of the 19th century. I think Redhead died last year.
Yeah.
I think a person by the name of Job Antelope has been designated as the medicine arrow.
That's right.
Keeper.
How long have they had these arrows?
One can't say. They were brought to the tribe by a culture hero.
Who was?
Sweet medicine. And I suppose if you logically, that when the Cheyennes changed from essentially a woodlands people living in earth lodges, kind of like the Pawnees, and moved out into the plains, their culture changed, their economy changed. And the tradition is that they were brought to the Cheyennes when the Cheyennes were near the sacred mountain, which is Bear Butte, just north of the Black Hills, just kind of a detached butte. So if you have to give time to that, probably sometime around from 1790 to about 1810 in terms of our chronology. You can't really be that precise because you're dealing with myth. You're dealing with no exact record. The only reason that I say that this particular chronology is that you can, from the fur trade, piece together when the Cheyennes first got to the Black Hills. And that was around 1800, more or less. But even then you don't know for certain because there were no fur traders out there with them to be there. They moved up the Cheyenne River from the Missouri. And the Cheyenne River goes right out to the foothills of the Black Hills. It must have been around that. The Cheyennes really aren't concerned about that, about being as precise in time. Time doesn't move necessarily in the same way for the Cheyenne Arapaho as it does for the whites.
Have you seen the arrows?
No.
I guess Cheyennes or not.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But there have been anthropologists who have seen the arrows. White anthropologists. One is a fellow who lives, an anthropologist who lives in Wichita State University, Carl Schleiser. And I think one of his students also saw the arrows. Hal Otten has written a study on the arrow renewal ceremony that he witnessed. Whether they saw physically the arrows or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Blackcow was going up to the arrow keeper that afternoon when I talked to him.
Mm-hmm.
How many chiefs do the Cheyennes have?
Traditionally,
Yes.
44.
How many today?
I don't know. They have a number of districts, and then they'll have chiefs from the districts, but it's kind of mixed into traditional chiefs, and then they also have leaders of the business council. The chiefs are selected. I don't know how many chiefs are in the old agency era. I know some of them, but not all. No, I wouldn't even say I know a majority anymore.
Yeah, Mr. Blackcow became chief in the 50s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's been chief for a while.
Yeah.
I think he's in his middle 80s now.
The person I know best as a chief is Lawrence Hart, who lives out of Clinton.
Okay, I know who he is.
And
He's a Mennonite preacher.
Yeah. His father was a chief and his grandfather was a chief. And they came from Hammond originally. I know him better than I know others.
I'm trying to contact him now, Mr. Hart.
Mm-hmm.
You say the other sacred totem is a buffalo hat?
The sacred buffalo hat.
Sacred buffalo hat.
Yeah, that's in the north.
Now, what's its purpose?
The Cheyennes believe that this is the sacred object when venerated properly and not mutilated. It brings, again, prosperity, food. It renews, it signifies the renewal of the earth. It's more of a fertility symbol than the arrows. The arrows tend to be guarded as the totem of men. The sacred buffalo hat tends to be more related to Mother Earth, to the buffalo, to women.
How come there's a Northern Cheyenne and a Southern Cheyenne? How come they're different?
When the southern bands moved down, some decided not to come down. And then very gradually, as transportation split through the Platte Road, the railroads, some of the Cheyennes stayed on northern plains and tended to live from the Black Hills out to the Bighorn River, in the Powder River country. And there they hunted and there they lived. And they gradually became separate and became attached to the upper Platte agency. So the Cheyennes in the lower part became attached to the upper Arkansas agency. And then the Indians on the upper Platte gradually became associated with finally with the Red Cloud Agency, Pine River Agency. And after the war, after the Sioux War, some of the Northern Cheyennes surrendered up in Montana at Fort Keogh, near Miles City.
Right.
And they gradually then carved out a reservation for them up on the Rosebud River. But that didn't occur until 1884.
White Horse, the one that stole the horses at Fort Sill and signed Medicine Lodge Treaty, was Cheyenne, wasn't he?
White Horse?
Because Mr. Blackcow said that's his grandfather.
Could be. I don't know.
Okay. You think the Cheyenne will be able to keep...
You could check it out very easily on the census rolls.
Yeah. Will the Cheyenne be able to keep Bears Butte? Will it be taken away from them?
Well, right now it's not theirs.
Well, South Dakota wants to make a state park out of it.
Yeah. Right now it's not theirs.
Who does it belong to?
Well, this is the question. When the United States unilaterally moved the line, the western boundary of the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1868, they moved it 1 degree east. So the line the United States government claims falls to the east of the Black Hills and Bear Butte. Since the Northern Cheyennes had some rights to the Sioux Reservation by the Treaty of Fort Laramie, then they have some claim to the Black Hills and to Bear Butte. But this is the difficult point. The United States government, as sovereign, has the right of preemption and merely has to show that indeed the Indian did somehow lose his rights of use and occupancy. Trace through the treaties. The Cheyennes deny that, both northern and southern people deny that that land was ever ceded. And so this is a matter of contest. The Sioux are as involved as the Northern Cheyennes. Bear Butte just happens to be an extension of the Black Hills. And the Sioux say the same thing about the Black Hills, that it's never been properly ceded.
Think about the Sioux, though. Didn't they take that away from the Crow Indians?
So does Cheyenne. The Cheyenne claim that they are the true possessors of the Powder River country because they were there first.
So who does it belong to?
Now it belongs mostly to the United States, except for the reservations.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Cheyennes claim that in the movement from the Black Hills, they and the Arapahos were ahead of the Sioux. They were the ones who first began fighting the Crow. The Crow once occupied that country as far east from the Bighorns to the Powder River. The Cheyennes, feeling the Sioux pressure behind them, begin moving out. They begin fighting the Crows as early as 1820. Then they are joined by more and more Oglalas and Brulés, who are twice, 3 times as numerous. Then comes the Treaty of Fort Laramie. They don't deal with the Cheyennes for land, the Cheyenne Arapaho for land. They only deal with the Sioux. Red Cloud's War on the Bozeman Trail, the Cheyennes fought in that war too. But it was Red Cloud who sets it. Mm-hmm. He's the person, and the Sioux are the people who receive the Sioux Reservation east of the Missouri River, west of the Missouri River, out to 104 degrees, something of that nature.
Can a Cheyenne understand the Arapaho, vice versa? You say it's all Algonquin with different dialects.
Yeah, with difficulty. With difficulty.
Are there still many speakers?
Yes, there are a number. There are. It's, I think, fading out with younger people, perhaps in their 20s. But I know the people I know can speak Cheyenne, speak Arapaho. There may be people in their 40s and 50s. But as the youngsters go more to the public schools, are more assimilated, the language just gradually fades. Mm-hmm. I know Lawrence Hart speaks Cheyenne, but I don't think any of his children speak Cheyenne. Now they may be able to understand what the carry on a conversation as we are, I doubt that they could respond in Cheyenne. But I know there are other families where the Cheyenne or Arapaho is spoken in the home. It depends on the people, whether they really want to preserve that particular part of their heritage.
Let's see. How long have you been studying the Cheyenne and the Arapaho?
I think about 1953, 54.
Who were some of the most prominent people you met in the tribe?
Oh, see. Jesse Rolodge, Arapaho. Fred Bushyhead, Lawrence Hart, Eileen Comasila. I've met a lot of people.
Which one impressed you the most?
Probably in his own way. Fred Bushyhead from El Reno.
Was he a chief of the Arapaho?
No, he was not a chief. He's never been a chief.
Is he Cheyenne or Arapaho?
He's Cheyenne.
He's Cheyenne.
And Jerome Bushyhead is his son.
I know him.
Now, Fred, to me, is one of the finest human beings I've ever met in my life. He's had his troubles. He's had his problems. And he and I have been friends maybe 10 years or so. And he's traditional enough so that although he was briefly chairman of the business committee, he never would be a chief because he believes in the tradition that only a full-blood Cheyenne should be chief. If there's any part Euro-American within the ancestry, they should not be. And Fred is partly descended from the Gourier family, Gary. And probably one of his grandfathers was a Gourier. And therefore he never would become a chief. But Lawrence Hart is a very interesting man. Well educated, very articulate, very concerned about his people. I met several times Ralph Goodman, who's now dead. He was a chief from around Kingfisher. I met a peyote leader by the name of Paul Rhodes from Mount. He was a peyote road priest for Thomas. There's family named Thomas. I've met an awful lot of people.
Do you think that Mr. Bushyhead and Mr. Hart would win an interview?
Well, I'm sure Lawrence would. Fred is very ill.
He is.
Now, I always go out and see him every time I come down here. And he's been very ill for about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
But you, if I were, my advice would be see Jerome.
Yeah, I know Jerome.
See Jerome.
Yeah.
And see whether he thinks his dad is strong enough to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Fred, before he became ill, and even today, I hope he's still alive. I haven't heard that he's died. Has a fabulous knowledge of the history of the people from the 30s on. He's as knowledgeable as anybody else about the people since the 1930s, as an adult.
In El Reno, there's a Mrs. Clark, who's the daughter-in-law of Ben Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to Ben Clark,
Mm-hmm.
who's her son, his
Mhm.
grandson of the Indian Scout.
Mm-hmm.
Have you met her?
No. I've never really done that much oral history. I tend to stay as much as I can with the documents, with archival materials. And I've read all the oral history done at the University of Oklahoma.
Where is the Medicine Lodge Treaty, the actual document? Does it still exist?
Well, you can get copies of them. I would imagine that since it's a treaty, you could find it in the treaty file in the State Department. They kept the originals of all those. They're deposited in the National Archives. And if you needed a copy of the treaty, but you can get the certified copies out of Kepler, Indian Laws and Treaties, and it's exact. It's prima facie in court of law. Kepler's prima facie in court of law. Or you can go to the statute books and get it too, because it had to be ratified by the Senate.
Well, the warrior societies, they still exist. They still.
I don't think the warrior societies, they have societies.
I know they have the bowstring society.
Yeah, that may be a descendant. But they have the Star Lodge and a number of other societies. In the North, I think they probably have more social organization in terms of their original societies. But once the wars were over, and once the fighting had died down, there really wasn't as much of a functional purpose for the warrior societies, especially after the villages were dispersed, after the allotment, after the people were broken out of the camps, because the warrior societies not only protected their people from enemies, but also controlled the camps for the chiefs, ordered the buffalo hunt functionally by the 18 in the South. The last time the warrior societies really operated as a political force was about 1884, 85 when they broke the cattle leases. That was distinctly the warrior society. But then by the 1892, where you had the cession agreement, the warrior societies are no longer the powerful force that they were just 8 years previously. But the organization persists.
Who was Sweet Medicine? You mentioned.
He was a culture hero. He was the bringer of the order of life. A mythical person, really.
Okay. More or less a creation.
Well, a mythical person.
Yeah.
A prophet who may or may not have been a real person. You don't know. You really can't penetrate the myth.
Okay.
But to me, that's not important. What's important is what the people believe.
That's right.
It's like a prophet. Yes, they were historical figures. But the fact that they gave a certain message, Sweet Medicine not only brought the totem to the tribe, but also brought political organization, bands, warrior societies, told the people how to live, told the people how to venerate the sacred totems, organized a way of life for the people as they were emerging as a plains people. And this is the religion, the supernaturalism, the visions. And that's what's important. Whether you can determine who sweet medicine was or not is essentially not important.
Yeah.
Cheyenne would tell you the same thing.
Yeah, Mr. Blackcow said that this person brought the arrows out of a cave,
Yes.
and I assume it bears Butte.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. There's a fine book, big study, by Peter Powell called Sweet Medicine. It's a big 2-volume study. Now the Southerners don't like it very well because they believe that Father Powell did some things that he wasn't supposed to do. But those 2 volumes have about everything that we know about the religious ceremonies of the Cheyennes, both north and south. He just published last year another one called The People of a Sacred Mountain, another 2-volume study, which is more a story of a history of the chiefs, warriors, and men of the northern Cheyennes. There's an awful lot of southern history in it.
Yeah.
And it's more traditional history, more based upon the oral traditions of the northern Cheyennes.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you.
You're welcome.